When we look at that food security and the importance of food, we're still kind of at that primary level, we're looking at a 3 to 5% return on our investments. And so when we look at the margin at the retailer, they're in the 30 to 40%. And you know, I know this isn't a grain group, it's meat, and where there's 10 cents of wheat in a loaf of bread. And so the loaf of bread is $4. And so when the price of wheat went up, went from $2 to $4. And so do you see a shift into actually where the food is grown to some of the margin? And when will we have that balance of where we're not oversupplying or we're sharing in this food security thing?
Right. That's complex, and we could have a seminar on it. But I mean, and there's always that I can have a go at this. First of all, it's a fact that power in the food industry is polarizing. It's going to either end of the chain. And so, and in history, the closer you are to the consumer, the better the margins.
Yes.
That's just a fact. It's also going to the other end, which is the providers of primary genetics, and who own the proprietary rights. They own the patents to those attributes that we can add to food products that other people value and willing to pay a premium for. And then everybody else in between gets the bejesus squeezed unless they have something that they own and other people value. And big companies like Nestle and Unilever have got things called brands. I mean, the real challenge for farmers and for anybody else, and for meat processors for that matter, is to say, how on earth can we get our hands on something that other people value, that we own, and that we can get some more value out of? And that is a particular challenge. But don't overdo it. I mean, you say that retailers make 30%. Well, they make 30% gross margin, but they do make their profit margin, of course, is 2%. 2.5%. So 2.5 cents in the dollar goes to the most major supermarkets. I'm working with Meijer out of the Illinois, that's that old Rust Belt area where they're a big retailer. Their target margin is 1.8%. I think 1.8%. If that's your target, you could lose 1.8%. That's right. So. Is it another day? Is it a halcyon period for farmers? I think it depends what sort of farmer you are. And I think if you're in grains, you're probably looking much better than, say, if you're in straight livestock and meat processing, where if you don't watch it, you'll get squeezed. Again, suddenly the price of feed grain goes up, but as we know, the price of meat doesn't necessarily go up concomitantly. And so, as I say, it's going to be increasingly, in a volatile market, it's going to be very, very risky. Notwithstanding that, if I look at the future, I know that meat demand globally is going to increase. But as I was saying, I want to work out what sort of meat. And I think I know where you should be. In Alberta, you've got the reputation, you've got the elements of a story, the provenance. There's margin there. And you should be at the top end because you'll get your clocks cleaned in the bottom end.
Yeah,
and the Brazilians will come and stamp all over you.
Yeah, totally agree. And I guess in Alberta we have to go the high value route because that's where we're.
So do I think there's going to be some redistribution of margin? Don't hold your breath.
Okay.
No, don't hold your breath.
Question over. David, again, enjoyed your talk. So here we are with the McDonald's, the Walmarts, the Carrefours. We have these global trends, and then we have producers like Byrne and his brother and many of us that are Spring Creek miniatures, very small in this agenda. And for us to develop enough product to attract those players that can invest and develop that marketing regime and get into that program, it's formidable. It's very difficult.
It is.
How do we as individuals, or even as a province, when you look at our annual production as a province, how do we capture that, grow that? And I appreciate there are models, Australia and others, but what's the guideline or the process to walk through from scratch to entering that marketplace and being successl?
And there are lots of elements of response to that. I mean, but first of all, clearly there isn't one way. But what I'm encouraged by, and actually going to talk a bit more tomorrow at another event about, is that with internet-based technology, it's increasingly easy for individuals or small groups to actually go around major retailers and go to consumers direct. And I see examples of that right around the world, and I think it's brilliant. However, it requires a set of skills and experiences and knowledge that we don't necessarily have, because most of us have never interacted with consumers before. I mean, God forbid there's opportunities for us to work closer together, to collaborate as producers. I hate to say that in Alberta, you know, in case I'm so struck down by the law. But, you know, combined with strength, if I look at berries in the UK, there are 64 farmers who own the business that sit on the board of, and we turn over 350 million Canadian dollars in fresh berries. 64 farmers, that's all. And we have a 40% market share in our season. And we influence events. We can say no, and we do, to major retailers when they bully. Because they do. They will. When you have, you know, these great powerful corporations, they will abuse that power from time to time. That's why you need competition policy in place and regulation and the security of the law. But there are many ways to doing this, you know, so it could be collaboration, could be going direct, it could be working in a better aligned way. And I know, you know, there are lots of ways. That's not a very good response to you, but I haven't got the time. But thank you very much for the question.
Last question.
David, excellent talk. I was just wondering, and I'm going to go at it from a beef industry side, but this affects all of the meat industries. There are certain practices that are used, such as something like feeding Monensin or brand name Rumensin, that accomplish what the consumers actually want. They want a greener product. So the product Monensin decreases greenhouse gases that are the emissions from the cattle. It increases rate of gain, so it decreases the amount of grain that you're throwing into this beef. But it's exactly what they don't want because it's something that they feel is an additive. Do you feel that there's an opportunity for the meat industries to do marketing about what we do, why we do it, and that we are accomplishing what you want?
It's about communication, and it's tough, isn't it? That's a particularly tough one. Yes, you know, the more consumers understand, actually what we should never do is hide it. Or suddenly rush out saying, actually, it's really good for the environment. I mean, what you're going through is exactly what Monsanto did. When they forgot to ask the consumer about Roundup Ready products, and then found that they got biff for it, they started off with saying, well, it's well worth for consumers because it'll give a cheaper product. And then when consumers, well, how much cheaper? They said, well, a cent. I said, well, we don't think that's good value, a cent. Oh, so that's not good enough for us. And so they went off and then came back about 6 months and said, it's excellent for the environment. And it sort of left the impression that they just sort of were making it up as they went along. So I think it's sort of useful, if you will, to, if you've got a product like that, is put plenty of air under it, if you will, and a proportion of consumers will get the message. Those at the extremes won't. And mind you, people at the extremes don't want a dialogue. You know, they want their own way. And all you've got to wait for is them to shoot themselves in the foot. And actually, what you'll find that is if we are into a food security problem, and we may well be, as I said in one of my slides, the new technologies, Rumensin is hardly new technology, but new technologies will be better embraced. I can see it already with genetic modification, that those who are most anti in Northern Europe are starting to be a little equivocal now. They say, well, maybe it's okay for fuel products. We can GM corn because we're going to turn it into fuel, because we're short of fuel. Maybe it's okay for fiber, because we're doing it already for cotton. And maybe it's okay for, patronizingly, Africa. And actually, they even said maybe it's okay for Australia because of their drought problem. And so that cracks in the wall. That in the end, one of the most visceral drivers of demand is when you believe that your family is not going to get enough food. And then your concerns, you start to rationalize previous concerns and embrace them if you think you're now part of the solution, not part of the problem.
David.